Everyone could see the undeniable chemistry between Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham whenever they were on stage together. Their voices blended like magic, their presence drew audiences in, and they looked like they were meant to create music, side by side. But what people didn't see was the storm raging behind closed doors. Their relationship was filled with battles that mirrored the beauty of their harmonies, love and destruction happening at the same time. Stevie wrote the haunting dreams about him, while Lindsey fired back with Go Your Own Way about her. Those songs became iconic, but they were only the beginning of a much deeper story. In 2021, Stevie finally pulled back the curtain, revealing the painful truth: sabotage, jealousy, ultimatums, in the exact moment she knew she had to walk away for good. The decision cost millions, but his reaction only proved she was right to stand her ground. Stevie's journey began long before Fleetwood Mac. Born on May 26, 1948, at Good Samaritan Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, her full name was Stephanie Lynn Nicks. Her father, Jess Nicks, was ambitious and talented, steadily climbing the corporate ladder until he became president of Armadale and executive vice president of Greyhound. His career success meant the family was constantly uprooted, never staying in one city for too long. That restless lifestyle gave Stevie an early lesson that nothing in life is permanent. Even her own name didn't stay the same. As a toddler, she couldn't pronounce Stephanie, so she called herself Ted. Eventually, Ted transformed into Stevie, and it stuck for life. That name change became symbolic of who she was, an artist whose identity was always evolving. Music entered Stevie's world through her grandfather, Aaron Jess A.J. Nicks Sr., born in 1892. A.J. was a country singer who never found fame, but carried an unshakable passion for music. He recognized something special in little Stevie. Just 5 years old, missing her front teeth, she began singing with him for 50 cents a week. He would lovingly tell her, "You're a harmony singer, honey." Together, they practiced songs like It's Late by Dorsey Burnett. A.J. dreamed of taking his granddaughter on tour with him, presenting themselves as the old troubadour and his prodigy. But Stevie's mother refused. She wanted to protect her daughter from the uncertainty of a musician's life. Still, A.J.'s encouragement planted a seed in Stevie. He taught her that music wasn't just sound, it was emotion, storytelling, and connection. Because of her father's career, Stevie's childhood was a patchwork of cities and schools. She lived in Phoenix, Los Angeles, Albuquerque, El Paso, Salt Lake City, Chicago, and different towns in California. Sometimes she stayed behind to finish school while her family moved ahead. Later in her song Candlebright, she described herself as a nomad rolling around my whole life. That constant moving gave her resilience, teaching her how to adapt, connect quickly, and start over again and again, skills she would desperately need once she stepped into the chaotic world of rock and roll. On her 16th birthday in 1964, everything shifted. Her parents rented her a Goya guitar and arranged for lessons. That same day, heartbreak struck. Her first boyfriend broke up with her. Instead of crumbling, Stevie picked up her guitar and poured the pain into her very first song. The lyrics were simple yet piercing. I've loved and I've lost and I'm sad but not blue. That was when it clicked. She wasn't just someone who enjoyed singing. She was a songwriter. Her parents recognized it too. From that day forward, music wasn't just an interest, it became her purpose. Her early influences might surprise those who know her only as a rock legend.
Growing up in the 50s and early 60s, she loved top 40 radio and girl groups like the Chiffons, Martha and the Vandellas, and the Shangri-Las.
One song in particular, Remember Walking in the Sand, left a deep impression on her. She also carried her grandfather's country influence. That blend of pop, soul, folk, and country shaped the unique sound that later allowed her to collaborate with artists as diverse as Tom Petty, Don Henley, and even Harry Styles. Stevie's music never fit neatly into one box. It was boundaryless. But her story truly took off in 1966, when she crossed paths with Lindsey Buckingham. Stevie was a high school senior, Lindsey a junior. They met at a Young Life meeting, a casual teen gathering, where Lindsey was playing California Dreamin' on his guitar. Stevie, unable to resist, walked over and began harmonizing effortlessly. Their voices fit together instantly. "I thought he was darling," she later admitted. Still, after that magical night, they wouldn't see each other again for 2 years. The spark was real, but the timing wasn't right. Then in 1968, fate stepped in. Lindsey called Stevie with an offer at his band. Fritz needed a lead singer. Stevie said yes. Up to that point, she had been performing folk, but Fritz was psychedelic rock. Within weeks, she went from singing small folk songs to opening for Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, and other counterculture icons. Fritz became her crash course in rock and roll. For 3.5 years, she and Lindsey worked side by side. Though not as a couple, Stevie even dated other people. The band had a strict rule. No one could date Stevie, but outsiders weren't welcome either. If anybody in the band started spending any time with me, the other three would literally pick that person apart, Stevie later revealed. The tension eventually tore Fritz apart in 1971. When the band dissolved, Stevie and Lindsey finally turned toward each other, musically and romantically. But just as they started planning their future, Lindsey fell gravely ill with mononucleosis. His case dragged on for nearly a year. Stevie became his caretaker, cooking, cleaning, and staying by his side while also writing songs. That period of illness solidified their bond. They weren't just collaborators anymore, they were partners. By then, they had already opened for legendary acts like Jimi Hendrix, Santana, Chicago, and the Steve Miller Band. Playing iconic venues such as the Fillmore and Winterland, Stevie soaked up every experience. "I saw Jimi Hendrix once, and I remember thinking, I want to wear white fringe. I want to tie a beautiful scarf in my hair," she recalled. Fritz never released an album, but they recorded songs like Take, Advantage of Me, and Stevie's Where Was I?, a song about betrayal that foreshadowed the emotional depth she would later bring to Fleetwood Mac. By late 1972, Stevie and Lindsey moved to Los Angeles, chasing their dreams, but reality hit hard. They were broke. Stevie worked multiple jobs waitressing at Bob's Big Boy, Clementine's, and the Copper Penny, even cleaning houses to survive. Ironically, one of the houses she cleaned belonged to producer Keith Olsen, who was also producing their music. By day, she scrubbed his floors. By night, she recorded vocals in his studio. "I was pretty grown up when I joined Fleetwood Mac," she later said. "I wouldn't have been able to handle overnight success otherwise." Their 1973 debut album, Buckingham Nicks, recorded at Sound City Studios, was supposed to be their big break. It did 10 polished songs, skilled session musicians, and solid production, but it flopped. Polydor dropped them, the record was pulled, and debts piled up. To make matters worse, the album cover even misspelled her name as Stevie. The failure devastated them. Her sacrifices had led nowhere. They fought constantly, with Lindsey often sleeping on the floor while Stevie retreated to the bedroom. With her dog, still she shouldered the financial burden, insisting he focus solely on music. "I was totally devoted to making it happen for him," she admitted. That devotion, however, left scars. Through it all, Keith Olsen never gave up on them. He let them live in his home, believing in their potential when no one else did. It was at Sound City that they met guitarist Waddy Wachtel, who became a vital figure in both their careers. He helped Lindsey learn to collaborate with other musicians, a skill that shaped his growth. Years later, Waddy would play the unforgettable riff on Stevie's solo classic, Edge of 17. That lifelong connection began during the lowest point of their careers. Then fate struck again in late 1974. Mick Fleetwood, searching for a studio, visited Sound City. Fleetwood Mac was in crisis after Bob Welch quit, and they needed a new guitarist. Keith Olsen played him Frozen Love from the Buckingham Nicks album. Mick was mesmerized, instantly hooked by the sound. He only wanted a guitarist, but what he got was more than he ever imagined. When Mick approached Lindsey with the offer, Lindsey hesitated. Fleetwood Mac's blues rock past didn't align with his vision of experimental harmonies and pop-driven music. Plus, he couldn't imagine leaving Stevie behind after everything they had built together. Stevie, however, saw the bigger picture. She listened to every Fleetwood Mac album, convinced they could fit in. Could join Fleetwood Mac, she told him, or we could move to Birmingham, Alabama. Alabama had some radio play for their music, but it felt like giving up. Stevie knew this was their only real chance. Finally, Lindsey called Mick Fleetwood back with one condition. Stevie had to join too. "We're a package deal," he said. Mick hadn't expected that, but after consideration, the band agreed. It was a gamble. Adding Stevie and Lindsey would completely transform Fleetwood Mac's sound, chemistry, and future. But it was a risk that would soon change music history forever. On New Year's Eve of 1974, Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham officially joined. Fleetwood Mac, that single moment marked the closing of one chapter in their lives and the beginning of another that none of them could have ever predicted. Just a few short weeks later, on January 26, 1975, rehearsals began for the new lineup. Yet before fully diving into their future with Fleetwood Mac, Stevie and Lindsey still had to finish some Buckingham Nicks shows. Their final performance as that duo took place in Birmingham, Alabama, where they sold out a massive 6,000-seat venue. "We were totally unknown in Los Angeles," Lindsey later recalled. But in Birmingham, they were going nuts. It was almost poetic. The very city that had embraced them in their struggles and failures gave them one last triumphant send-off, for they stepped into the history books of rock and roll. By early 1976, Fleetwood Mac was in the studio working on what would become their most legendary album, Rumors. Yet behind the music, their lives were unraveling. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham had just broken up, and though they tried to keep things professional for the sake of the band, the tension was impossible to ignore. "We were breaking up when we joined Fleetwood Mac," Stevie later admitted. "For a short time, they even reconciled, though not out of love, but out of necessity." Stevie explained she was smart enough to realize that if they split during the second month of joining the band, it could destroy everything. So she forced herself to stay calm and play nice. Lindsey, however, was distant, cold, and openly bitter. They weren't the only ones struggling. Christine and John McVeigh, married for 8 years, had stopped speaking to each other except when it involved music. Their divorce played out in the very middle of recording Rumors. At the same time, drummer Mick Fleetwood discovered his wife Jenny had been unfaithful with his best friend. The band members were falling apart emotionally and personally, yet they kept showing up to the studio. They kept writing. They kept recording. And in a strange twist of fate, all that heartbreak, betrayal, and anger transformed into musical magic. The personal turmoil bled into the songs themselves. Lindsey wrote, "Go Your Own Way," a furious, sharp-edged anthem clearly directed at Stevie. One particular lyric, "Packing up, shacking up's all you want to do," hit Stevie like a slap in the face. She despised singing it on stage. "I wanted to go over and kill him," she once admitted. Instead of responding with the same fury, Stevie countered with Dreams, a song full of calm, wisdom, and longing. Her lyrics, "When the rain washes you clean," you'll know, were aimed directly at Lindsey, but wrapped in a haunting melodic softness. Lindsey's was bitter. Mine was hopeful, Stevie later explained. Two sides of the same coin. Their arguments weren't just private battles anymore. They were playing out through their music in front of the entire world. That tension produced some of Fleetwood Mac's most iconic work. Dreams became the band's first and only #1 hit. But the musical tug-of-war didn't stop there. Stevie had written another deeply personal breakup song called Silver Springs. It didn't make the final album. Lindsey pushed for its removal, claiming there wasn't room. Instead, it was relegated to the B-side of Go Your Own Way. To Stevie, it felt like deliberate sabotage. "It was my emotional release," she said years later, and now it was buried. When the band eventually performed Silver Springs live, fans instantly embraced it. The song became a haunting reminder of their unresolved wounds in the battles. That never truly healed. Despite the chaos, Rumors exploded. Released in February 1977, it hit #1 and remained on the charts for an astounding 31 weeks. It sold over 21 million copies in the United States alone, achieving 20x platinum status. At the time, Warner Brothers had never seen anything like it, with an 800,000 unit pre-order, the biggest in its history. The album went on to win the Grammy for Album of the Year in 1978. John McVeigh once described Rumors as everyone writing in their diaries about each other. The irony was brutal. The more broken their lives became, the better their music sounded. Stevie Nicks didn't slow down after Rumors. In 1981, she launched her solo career with Belladonna, an album that debuted at #1 and quickly went multi-platinum. It proved Stevie wasn't just the voice of Fleetwood Mac, she was a star in her own right. She collaborated with some of the biggest names in music. Tom Petty joined her on Stop Draggin' My Heart Around, while Don Henley sang with her on Leather and Lace. Belladonna gave the world edge of 17, one of Stevie's most iconic songs. Rolling Stone crowned her the reigning queen of rock and roll. Alongside fame came darkness. Her cocaine use, which began in the early 1970s, spiraled dangerously out of control during the 1980s. She recalled her first encounter with the drug while working as a cleaning lady in 1973. Someone had left a line behind, almost like a test. By the height of her fame, she was spending millions on cocaine. Yes, don't I wish we had that money now and I could give it to cancer research, she later reflected, but it's gone. Her final time using cocaine on stage was in 1986 at Red Rocks. That night became her breaking point. For 2-3 years, it was fun, she admitted. But it turns into a monster, and it will kill you. Still, her career continued to thrive. In 1983, she released The Wild Heart with the synth-heavy hit Stand Back. It was modern, yet still carried her mystical essence. Then came Rock a Little in 1985, featuring Talk to Me. Both albums went platinum. Stevie was constantly recording, touring, and performing, all while still being part of Fleetwood Mac. But the endless pace was unsustainable. Drugs became her fuel, keeping her on stage but slowly tearing her apart. The chaos deepened when, during the 1977 Australian tour, Stevie and Mick Fleetwood entered into a brief but complicated affair. Mick was struggling with his broken marriage, and Stevie was still reeling from her split with Lindsey. They sought comfort in each other, but it only made the band's tangled web of relationships even messier. By the late 1980s, Stevie sought help. She turned to a psychiatrist, hoping for a way to break free from cocaine. Instead, she was prescribed Klonopin. The doctor reassured her it was safe, legal, clean, nothing like cocaine. What he failed to warn her about was that this safe pill would trap her for nearly a decade. At first, it brought relief, but soon it dulled her spirit and left her dependent. Unlike cocaine, which she had known was dangerous, Klonopin came with a prescription and a white coat, making it feel deceptively legitimate. Her dependence lasted 8 long years. By the early 1990s, Stevie knew she had to quit. But quitting Klonopin was not like quitting. Coconetta was brutal, both physically and emotionally. Her detox lasted 47 days. Every hour was a battle. Her hair went gray, her skin peeled, her legs cramped, and she couldn't sleep. I was in so much pain, she later said. It wasn't just hard, it felt life-threatening. Locked away. At home, she counted down the hours like a prisoner waiting for freedom. The drug had left visible scars. She gained around 30 pounds, a noticeable change for the once ethereal rock goddess. At 51, she barely recognized herself. I became a shadow of my former self, she admitted. Her creativity dulled. She stopped going out, stopped writing, stopped being the magical figure fans adored. Tremors soon followed, her hands and body shaking uncontrollably. At times, she feared it was Parkinson's or brain damage. Holding a microphone became terrifying. The drug had stolen her grace, her control, her essence. Yet, in that darkest moment, Stevie made a choice. She refused to let Klonopin define the rest of her life. She thought about checking into a luxury rehab, but her instincts told her otherwise. The rock star in me wanted to get in a limousine and go to Cedars-Sinai, she said. But then I told myself, you will fight out this 47 days. And she did alone, at home, with no spotlight and no applause. That decision became her turning point. It was raw, excruciating, but it was hers. Piece by piece, she reclaimed her power. Years later, Stevie's strength carried her into another storm. In 2018, Fleetwood Mac was honored at the Musicare's Person of the Year ceremony. What should have been a celebration instead became the breaking point. Tensions within the band had been simmering for months, and that night they boiled over. The event, Lindsey Buckingham's dismissive behavior, especially toward Harry Styles, whom Stevie admired as a symbol of hope for a new generation, cut deeply. He wasn't very nice to Harry, she recalled. To her, it felt like a slap, but there was more. That night, as the ceremony unfolded, Stevie heard the voices of her late parents in her head. Her mother asked gently, "Are you really going to spend the next 15 years of your life with this man?" Her father's voice followed. "It's time for you guys to get a divorce." It felt less like memory and more like guidance from beyond. Her parents had liked Lindsey, which made the message even more powerful. Stevie didn't tell anyone at the time. She smiled, gave her speech, but inside she knew the decision had been made. Then came the cameras, while Stevie spoke. Lindsey rolled his eyes for millions to see. It was public, petty, and deeply disrespectful. That one moment crystallized decades of resentment. Afterward, Stevie drew her line in the sand. It's him or me. The band couldn't lose. Hershey was their face, their legacy. Lindsey was out.